every song.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in love to those around me.
Same thing again, worthy of every song.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name.
Hey River Church, Pastor Mark coming to you. Good morning. Welcome to our online worship experience. So glad that you've joined us. And man, I am coming at you from the frozen tundra that is the River Franklin Park. It's been a cold weekend here. Gonna give you some hot announcements though to get you going here and just continue through our service so we can get to our message for today. Hey, I want to let you know that in February, the church is returning kind of into its normal schedule. So we will be starting up our small groups again, and we will be starting with our events again, and we hope that you will plug in also on Sunday mornings. I know it's dead of winter, and some of us have gotten used to staying at home, but plug in at church Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock. So a couple quick announcements. Again, watch for small groups that will be starting up. Hope that each of you will get involved with one of those. And then also on February 13th, big day around here as a church, we have baptisms and dedications. And if you would like to be baptized, and I really want to encourage you, if you've never been baptized by immersion as a believer, take that step. Take that step and do it. I really want to encourage you to do that. Or if you have a child that you'd like to get dedicated, please take the time to do that and get that done on February 13th. Hope that's what is going to happen. I hope you will get involved. My email is right here. Just email me. Let me know that is your wish, and we will go from there. Hey, I've got some more announcements for you in this little video, and then we'll jump into the next week of our series called Questions from God. Hey, miss y'all. Hope to see you really soon. Take care. Watch this. Well, hey, River Church. Thanks for joining us here for our online worship experience. I'm Pastor Mark. So glad that you're joined us, whether you're watching us from here in Pittsburgh or wherever in the whole wide world you're watching this. Welcome. Glad that you're here with us. Hey, I'm excited to give this message to you. I'm standing in our church lobby right now, which sneak peek, and some of you know this already, but this whole area is getting an extreme makeover coming very, very soon. Really excited about it, which will help us serve you all better, will help serve the groups that come from the community, and hopefully we have more and more people who use this building, and we have opportunities to use it for the glory of God. So we have some really cool things coming up, so stay tuned for that. Hey, I want to start today by talking about something that happened to me in 2008. Now, I want to let you know, I'm not a car guy. I'm not like a guy who thinks about cars and obsessed with cars. But in 2008, we needed to get a new car. And so I saw a car that I really liked. And maybe you remember me driving this car, but it was an FJ Cruiser, a Toyota FJ Cruiser, 2008. Now, I found this car online. So I found it online. This is back before people bought a lot of cars online. You know, there was I don't even think there were any apps to do that or anything like that back in 2008. But I found this car online. The problem was it was all the way in Maryland, south of DC. And so I kind of went on a mission to get this car. So I figured all of this out, how I was going to get down there by myself and then drive the car back home. So my mission included, first of all, taking a Southwest flight from Pittsburgh to Baltimore and taking that flight, then taking a bus from Baltimore to DC, then taking the metro from DC, the subway, to as far south of DC that I could. And then the dealer drove up to that last metro station, picked me up, and drove me back to the dealership where I bought the car and then drove it home. It truly was planes, trains, and automobiles, if you're familiar with that movie. But that day was a mission. It had to be all planned out, how I was going to do this, and I had a vision for what I wanted. I saw this car and I really wanted to get it. And today's message is about a mission. It's about an adventure. It's about a vision. It's about a calling. It's about a calling on a person's life. And I just got to tell you as we start this, that I believe you watching this, and I believe everyone has a mission in life to do, a God-given mission, that there's a God-given adventure for each person, and there's a God-given vision and calling for each person's life. And this story today really, I think, emphasizes that, and I think you'll see that in a moment. This is week 4 of our series called Questions from God. Yeah, not questions to God. We are very familiar with that, and many of us have many questions. But these are questions that God actually asks people in the scripture. So we picked 10 of them. We're on week 4. I'm sorry, we picked 8 of them. We're on week 4 of that 8. And today, I'm going to walk you through the story. It's going to take us a little while then to get to the actual question that comes from God. So here's a question. This isn't from God. This is from me. Think about the most beautiful, terrifying thing you've ever seen. So both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I know some people have gone whale watching and they've seen this beautiful thing happen, but maybe a little scared that the whale was going to jump onto their boat, or maybe you've been to the Grand Canyon and you were afraid to go up to the edge because it was terrifying, but the most beautiful thing you ever saw in your life. So what's the most beautiful and at the same time the most terrifying? Now, guys, listen to this. Don't say your spouse, okay? She's hopefully not the most beautiful and the most terrifying thing at the same time, but I recommend you don't pick that one. So maybe it's the Grand Canyon, maybe it's whale watching. I don't know what it is for you. But the story that we're going to look at today comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6. And I think in this passage, Isaiah is going to see what was the most beautiful thing that he ever saw, but also the most terrifying thing he ever saw, all at the same time. So let me set some background for you. Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah is a prophet of God. So he speaks to the people and prophesies about God to them. Isaiah served under 4 kings. He had a long run as a prophet. And his time of service is kind of the beginning of the end for Israel, Judah. It's a beginning of the end. It is declining, let's say that they're about to go into captivity in both Babylon and Assyria because of their disobedience to God and because they're constant wandering away from God. So things are kind of in decline. It's kind of the beginning of the end. And these events take place 700 years before the life of Jesus. So this is an Old Testament story, 700 years before Jesus. And this is what it says in the first 4 verses of Isaiah chapter 6. It says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne. And the train of his robe filled the temple, and above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings, and with 2 wings they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying, and they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorpost and threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke." Pretty beautiful and terrifying all at once. But I want you to notice something here at the very beginning. Isaiah starts chapter 6 by writing, "In the year that King Uzziah died." Now, why is that important? Why would he, other than just to date this, why would he say that? Because he's letting you know that the king is dead and that this is a time of insecurity. It's a time of uncertainty. It's a throne in transition. There's probably political upheaval. Like, we can't relate to this at all, right? Just insecurity and uncertainty everywhere. But he gives this vision of God on the throne. He starts with Uzziah is dead, the king is dead. But he wants you and I to know, and I want you to know today, that God is still on the throne. No matter what changes politically or what changes in our country or in our world, God is still on the throne. God is still sovereign. God is still the ruler of all things. God is on the throne. So it doesn't matter that King Uzziah is dead or that this is going on in the world. They're important. But remember, no matter what's going on in your life, God is on the throne. You know, it's kind of crazy in our culture these days. People in our country think that nobody's on the throne, that there is no God and God is not on the throne. There's nobody sovereign over all things. Or maybe they think science is on the throne. That gets thrown around a lot by different people about how just science will save us and science is really on the throne and in control. Or politics is in control and on the throne. Or man is on the throne and they put their hope in a certain person that they are on the throne. But Isaiah lets us know that God is on the throne. And then he gives us this amazing vision of God on his throne. And in this vision, it's pretty cool. We have God on his throne. We have these crazy creatures flying around. We have smoke and we have some killer bass, right? Did you catch that when I read that? We have some killer bass. It says, at the sound of their voices, the doorpost and threshold shook and the temple was filled with smoke. I mean, things are hopping. All right, there's bass going on. There's some killer bass. And the scripture tells us in Isaiah chapter 6 that the soundtrack for heaven is one specific word said over and over and over again. They were calling to one another. There's other instances in the scripture where people are singing these words, is holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty, and the whole earth is filled with his glory. Holy, holy, holy. When you see something in Hebrew, which is written, the original language here, repeated three times, it's meant to say it's holy, holy, holy. It would be like saying, hey, that guy is not just cool, he's cool, cool, cool. Holy, holy, holy. 3 times. It's meant to get your attention. It's meant you to understand holy, that God is holy, that he's different, that he's set apart, that he's above all, that he's sacred, that he is different than us. It's meant to give you this compelling vision of God. And see, that's where we start today, is that we have to have a compelling vision of who God is. If we want to do and be the people that God has called us to be, then we have to start with this compelling vision of God. You have to see God accurately. Isaiah is seeing God accurately here. You and I have to see God accurately. But so many people have some really weird pictures of God that are way less than compelling. One of my favorite places to eat is the Franklin Inn, owned by my friends John and Wendy. Many of you are familiar with the Franklin Inn. Great Mexican food. We love going there. And if you didn't know this, there's a scene from the movie Dogma, which was filmed inside their restaurant. If you go in there, there's a poster from the movie of where it was filmed. And that movie, Dogma, deals with religious things and who God is and all these different things. And one of the things that they show you in the movie Dogma is this Buddy Jesus statue. And this is the picture that people have of Jesus. It'll come up on the screen here. The Buddy Jesus, like he's just your buddy. He's just your friend. And that's always like your bowling buddy. And that's their picture of God. And they're not operating out of this accurate picture. Or people call God the man upstairs, or he's kind of like Santa Claus, or he's kind of like maybe more mystical, like the Force. But that's not the picture that we see here in Isaiah. We get this compelling vision of God, full of power and majesty and holiness. This is the vision that Isaiah sees of God, this almighty, all-powerful God, that the whole earth is filled with his glory. And so you have this compelling vision of God, this compelling vision of who God really is. Watch this. So we have this compelling vision of God, that Isaiah, and then it's followed up by a devastating realization. It goes on in verse 5 that after he sees this vision of God, it says, woe to me. Like he sees God for who God is. And then Isaiah says, woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. See, when Isaiah sees God for who God is, he sees himself for who he is. And when he's in the presence of God's power and majesty and might and, yes, holiness, his response is, I'm ruined. I'm toast. I'm done. I can't be with a holy God because I'm so unclean. I'm such a man of unclean lips. It's a way to say that everything that's in me is unclean, because what is in me, as Jesus said, right, comes out my lips. What's in my heart comes out my lips, and I'm an unclean person, and I live amongst the people that are really, really, really messed up. I know you don't have a problem with that. I know that's real easy to believe. But we have to look at ourselves too. And Isaiah says, I'm a man. You come to this devastating realization when you get close to God and who God is. I see myself in the light of that. I see myself in the light of who God really is and who I am, who I really am. And what that brings, what it should bring for each of us, is humility. Humility. To see ourselves accurately, to see God accurately, it should bring humility. I love how David Brooks, who one of my favorite writers, he wrote in his book, Road to Character, he wrote that the younger generations, and I would say younger generations than my own, as a Gen Xer, especially what they call the greatest generation, saw themselves with such humility. They weren't self-promoters. They weren't even when they were victorious, like in World War II, they didn't see it as a time to gloat or a time to exert themselves as the strongest in the world or the best. But there was just a soberness to them. There was a soberness to their lives where they realized as human beings what they were capable of, good and bad. They realized that they needed God. They realized that they weren't so self-sufficient and they were not into self-promotion in so many ways. Wow, how things have changed. You know, we often have become a culture filled with pride, filled with self-promotion, a whole culture saying, look at me, look how great I am, look what I've accomplished, look at me, look at me, look at me. I am God, in a sense, is the ultimate level of that. It's the ultimate level of pride and self-promotion. C.S. Lewis said it this way. He said, pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. It's the complete anti-God state of mind. It is pride which has been the chief cause of misery in every nation and every family since the world began. Wow, he had such a great view of pride. And see, when Isaiah stands before God, he's filled with humility. He's filled with humility. And you might say this, you might see this in here when he sees that he is in the presence of a holy God. He's filled with humility. He's filled with he's like, I am ruined. I am ruined. It's so different than our culture because we avoid anything that makes us feel unsettled or uncomfortable or bad about ourselves. And anything bad about ourselves that could be true about us is to be avoided or at worst in our culture, condemned. Like, you can't say that about me. You can't make me feel less about myself, which has become one of the greatest sins you can do in a culture. But when Isaiah stood before God, he felt less about himself. He came to this devastating realization of who he actually was. But here's the cool thing. We have to come to that realization, but God doesn't leave us there. See, God doesn't leave us just in that devastating realization, because what comes next is amazing provision. Amazing provision. Verse 6 and 7 of Isaiah 6. Then one of the seraphim, that's one of those freaky creatures, flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. So this comes from the altar of God. It's not from Isaiah. It comes from the altar, this flaming coal. And with it he touched my mouth, and he said, see that this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for. So in the midst of this devastating realization comes an amazing provision. What comes from the altar of God is provision and rescue and grace and love and forgiveness and atonement. It's redemption. And it comes from the altar of God to us. Now, this is in Isaiah's vision, but this has come to us in the form of Jesus Christ, who was all those things sent for us for our salvation. It has come from God's throne to us, just as this coal has come. There's amazing provision. God, who is known as Jehovah Jireh, which literally means God our provider, has provided this amazing provision of grace, forgiveness, atonement. And God meets him right in his point of need. He sends the coal to his lips. Isaiah, you say you're a man who's ruined because you're a man of unclean lips, and you're a man who live amongst people of unclean lips. And so I'm sending this right to your need. Let it touch your lips. As a symbol of I've forgiven you at the deepest part of your need. At your deepest part. So there's this compelling vision of God. There's this devastating realization, but then there's this amazing provision that God sends to us. And what is the response to that? And this is what takes us into our question for today. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? Whom shall I send? That is our question for us. After your life has been touched by God, God's call out to you and to me is, whom shall I send? Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Kind of question today, A and B. Whom shall I send, and who will go? Who will go for us? And that is going to take a willing heart. It's going to take a willing heart. As soon as that is said, then I heard the voice of the Lord say, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, that's Isaiah, here am I, send me. Here am I, send me. This is Isaiah's response. Isaiah puts his hand up immediately and says, pick me. Oh, pick me. Oh, pick me. Do you notice that when Isaiah says, I'll go, pick me, I'll go? Do you know that God hasn't told him where he's going or even what he's going to do? There's no information given. And Isaiah, though, immediately jumps in and says, pick me, pick me, pick me. See, because Isaiah at this point knows who asked. He knows that the God of the universe asked. And so Isaiah is willing to go. It's so different than how we do it, isn't it? It's often like we look and go, what's it going to cost? Where's it at? Who's going to be there? No, Isaiah just jumps in and says, pick me, I'll go. Where do you want me to go, Lord? What do you have for me to do? Yes, Lord, whatever it is, I'll go. See, when you saw what Isaiah saw, when you've experienced what Isaiah experienced, and when you've been forgiven as Isaiah was forgiven, and then the call goes out, your response, like Isaiah's, should be, pick me for whatever. Whatever you have for me, Lord, I trust you. I trust that what you have for me, Lord, is better than anything I could choose for myself. Pick me. There was another man named Saul who goes by Paul. in the New Testament for some of it, most of it. Paul said it this way because he was also a man who had experienced the love and the kindness and the forgiveness of Jesus. And Paul said it this way. He said, to live is Christ and to die is gain. That was his way of saying, whatever you have for me, God. If you want me to live, it's for Christ. If you want me to die, if this leads me to my death, it's for my gain. Because I get to be with you. But pick me. Pick me, Lord. Here am I. Send me. And so see, the call still goes out. The call still goes out. All throughout history, the call goes out. Jesus talks about it this way. He says, the harvest is ripe, but the workers are few. There's few people who will respond to the call when I said, whom shall we send and who will go for us? There's so few that will respond and say, pick me. Pick me. Have you ever asked yourself what you're willing to do for the Lord? That He calls to you? Do you have a compelling vision of God? Have you come to the devastating realization of who you are without Him? And have you seen His amazing provision to you? And do you have a willing heart? Jesus is looking for people who are willing. The scripture calls us in Matthew 28 to go out into all the world, making disciples, teaching about Jesus, sharing the love of God with people. You know, this has always been the prayer for our church here. It's the prayer for our church, that we would be a people that would say yes to whatever God calls us to. And I think it's a new season here at the river. I think it's a new season. And what I want to challenge us to is I really want to challenge us to do something that we haven't done a great job at to this point. And that's to reach the people that are right here in this area surrounding the church. There are so many people. There are new neighborhoods being built right here. I want to challenge us to reach those people and to go to the people that God has for us to reach. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what exactly we're going to do, but it starts with a willing heart and your heart and my heart to say, okay, God, here we go. What do you have for us? Where are you sending us? Where are you sending us out from the river, but out into the world to share your love with it? Who will go? So watch this, and then we'll wrap up our service. And as you watch it, will you ask yourself that same question? Amen.